Hey everybody, this is Mark Williams, Circle of the Dark Mother. Um, I had somebody ask about my altars and my books. So this is going to be shared both on YouTube and with a bunch of groups that I'm part of. So let's dig in. I was going to do this on a video, like record the whole thing as a video, but my hand is just not steady enough with a phone. So I've decided that it's better to do it this way. So I'm using pictures, but I will describe what I'm showing you. So my first altar is to the east, and I work in a Gnostic Kabbalistic manner. So each of the directions have a meaning. East is the gate of life. It is also air, and it is healing, spiritual, physical, any type of healing or mending. You'll notice that this altar has some of the biggest stuff on it as you look through, and that's because this is my main altar. This is the one I use the most. With this altar being a Kabbalistic altar, there are 5 main ritual tools, and there is also something about the directions. So to the right is mercy in Kabbalah, left is severity, and the center is compassion. So you notice that I have a very bright white version of Lilith to the right. I have a black Lilith to the left, and then I have this very large, almost 4-foot Lilith in the center. This central one was a Guadalupe statue that we had in our yard. It was just all copper. And a friend of mine named James painted it, did an amazing job. I added the wings, the crown, some facial makeup and details, and then, of course, all of the jewelry that she has. You'll notice that this altar has also Lilith from the garden with the serpent. That's because that's one of her earliest Judaic paradigms. So that's included. The main tools that I have on here, you can see on the right, there's a very large crystal ball. It's about a foot in diameter, maybe 10 inches. And the crystal ball represents spirit. Below that is an agate, which is representing a pentacle, and that is earth. And then as you move toward the center, there is a crystal wand, which represents fire, a crystal porba, which is like an athame, and that represents fire. And then there's a cup, which is way to the left, which represents water. You'll also notice there's a crystal skull on this altar, and that's because the crystal skull represents our body of light, our spiritual body, and not our physical body. And this crystal skull is almost human head size. Below it, I have 2 of my books that I've written that have been published, and that's because they are offerings that I'm giving to her. You'll also notice in the back, there are some statues that are raised up that are about halfway up the whole picture. And those are actually to represent 4 of the spheres in the middle pillar of the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. Way to the left, we have the first one, which is to represent Ne'ama for kingdom. Toward the center on the left, there's a blue statue you can just see a little bit of, and that's Mary Magdalene to represent beauty in the middle pillar. And then if you go to the right, there's a little bit of statue sticking out behind the gold under the wing. Is Aishit Zunanim from Deat or on the middle pillar. And then way to the right, there is a black dragon, and that's to represent Omaroka, the black dragon of the void. So that's a little extra piece I have here. There was open space, so that's where I put it. The next altar is the south, and there's quite a bit to this, even though it's a smaller altar in width. So I wanted to take a picture that included all of it. You'll notice on the altar, there are a bunch of statues, and above the altar, in fact, are statues that are very reminiscent of Lilith's Mesopotamian aspects, which is Lilitu in Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylon. She also is very similar to a couple of the goddesses in Canaan, which was about the same time and later on, and in fact, early Judaism. So this is being the south represents fire and protection. And I do have an object for every one of the tools. So I have a sphere, a pentacle, a wand, a knife, and a cup. I also have two eggs on it. One of those eggs was housed in the Temple of Isis in New Orleans for a long time, and a friend of mine gave it to me. So it is here with the mother goddess. You'll notice I also have another skull. This one is full of alcohol, which is a good way to represent the fire within us. Below the altar, there's a bunch of little niches that have a bunch of stuff. There is a ram skull, because skull, and the ram horns representing something old and dark, again with Lilith. And then my owl collection, which is a bunch of owl statues. The owl is, of course, associated with Lilith and has been for a very long time. You'll notice there's a C to the left and an M to the right, and that represents circle or circulus, and the M is Mother Matrim, which our website is circulus-matrim.com. Really good friend of mine did these stained glass windows. Beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. Her name's Misty. The next altar is to the south, to the west. And this represents the gate of death. It represents also prophecy and dreams. And as well, it also represents the element of water. The painting in the back is a painting of Lilith that my friend Misty also did. She also did the cover to my first book. I did, in this picture, paint over the nipples because I don't want to have a YouTube issue. But usually there is nothing over that part of her. These statues, not all of them are meant to be Lilith, but they represent to me the darker aspects of Lilith. So we have a Lamia to the right, as well as a Medusa type figure that's another Lamia. On the left, we have a sorceress, and we have a dark mermaid, which is like Pequeña or Qualilitu, her mermaid aspect. And then the center is the statue from Diablo 4. But I did take the skull off of it, and I put beads of different kinds and Lilith rosaries in her hands. There are also two statues here that are representing her with consorts. The one on the right is her and Lucifer. The one on the left is her and Ashmedai, because that's a little more wrathful or severe. Remember, the right is merciful, the left is severity, and the middle is compassion. I also do have each of the elements here. I have a sphere, I have a pentacle, I have a wand, I have a knife. That knife, by the way, has Lilith's name in Hebrew etched into it, and then it has her symbol from astrology. I also have a cup, everything you need for an altar in Kabbalah. And as I said, a couple of these statues were not meant to be her, but they remind me of her and make me think of her aspects, so I use them. We now move to the north, and this altar has a couple different purposes. So north in Kabbalah represents the element of earth. It is also magic, and it is a closer to our realm kind of thing. So the aspect of Lilith I use here is Neama, and that is this idea of Neama was a being who was incarnate. She was in a human body, and then when she passes, she becomes a demonic figure that I believe is an aspect of Lilith. You can see the beautiful wood carving in the above it. There's a couple of Lilith sigils, beautiful figure of her in the center with a turkey, a bunch of turkey feathers behind her. There's also then these two statues which are not meant to be Lilith on the right and the left, but they represent to me this, over the ages kind of figure that is an embodiment of Lilith. And even though these aren't supposed to be her, they make me think of her very heavily, so I use them. There are two other aspects of Lilith on the also on this altar. There is a sphere, there's a pentacle, there's a wand, There's also a knife, and then there's a Kapala, which is a Buddhist skull-capped cup. There is a small crystal skull with a dark smoky quartz in the background cut into a flame shape. There is a snake on here. Snakes are associated with her as well as owls. I do then have below this in the open area, this is an altar dedicated to her children. So the Lilin and Lilu. And I'm using the Pampajira and the Ashu from Kambanda to represent her. So that's an altar in and of itself, but it's to her children. Under the other part, you can see in that there's other statues. Those are all different Dark Mother, like Black Madonnas and stuff that I have statues of that I put in there. And then you'll see the giant sarcophagus or sarcophagi, can't miss them. The king on the right and the queen on the left, they open up and there's shelves in them. And I use them for storage of when I do a spell bottle or I do something else, I use them for the storage of different things. But they are part of the altar with the idea of the masculine being on the merciful side, the feminine on the severe. So, because that's how Kabbalah works. So, and that's not any kind of negatives on men or women. Human beings, whether they're male or female humans, they are both masculine and feminine. So it's not about gender, it's about polarities. So that's my fourth altar. And these are all in a circle, against the walls in a room where I do spells, I do ritual, I do prayer. There is a chair in the middle where I can sit down and do workings. It's more impressive with the lights out because it's very Gothic looking. But again, so you could see the actual imagery, I decided to use the lights. The next slide are my two books that are in print right now. So Embracing Lilith is my first book. It was written it was published in 2019, written in 2017 and 2018. It is really an intro to Lilith. And then I took all of her myths that I knew about at the time, and I put them together into a modern retelling. So from a modern language standpoint, put it all together into really one story. And then at the end, there is experiential stuff, how to do, different things with her, stuff about altars, and then some people's experiences. Then the one on the right is my second book called Embodying Lilith, a Gnostic Kabbalah of Lilith. And it really is Gnostic Kabbalah. The whole thing has an intro, and then it goes into the spheres of the Tree of Life and the spheres of the Qliphoth, with Lilith at every aspect. Now, I do cover the traditional aspects so that you can learn Kabbalah as you go, but I also include Lilith because of the fact that she is who I work with, so I include her at every step. The third section then is the paths or the Netivot on the Tree of Life and the Qliphoth. And that also has Lilith involved in every one of them. There's a lot of practices and things like that. The first painting was done by my friend Misty, who did the other artwork and the and also the stained glass. The one on the right was done by my friend Tino. And when you look at this, so there's the Tree of Life in the middle with Lilith's sigil. And then to the right is a merciful version of her. And to the left is a very severe version. So that was the imagery. And the right has like a glowing heart, where the left has the cosmos. And it just gives you an idea for the different aspects of her. These books are both available on Amazon, on my website. You can also get them at some metaphysical stores. So those are the two books out right now. I am working on a third book called Empowering Lilith, Fueling the Lilith Within. Hopefully that'll be done here in the next, let's say, 6 months. Empowering Lilith is going to be a little more down to earth than the second book. The second book was pretty deep because of all the Kabbalah. It's going to be about Mesopotamian witchcraft, traditions, Lilith and her aspects from those. And it'll have ways to work with her and do magic. And then there'll be some social justice stuff included. And that's because Lilith, being who she is, the goddess of the outcast, the goddess of those who are marginalized. As she was marginalized, she was a goddess who then is demonized, and then said to be the wife of God Most High at times. She runs the gamut, and so she is there for all. So that will be my new book, still in progress. And then to the right, I did write a sort of an occult suspense graphic novel. And it's called Shades and Shadows. Even though it says with beginning 1 of 5, this is the cover we ended up using for the whole series. It's one graphic novel available on Amazon. And my friend Tiffany Stafford, who is an amazing artist, did all the art for it. So hopefully that was interesting. If you have any questions, please let me know, and enjoy.